next inductee will be Darcy Fast, and pulling double duty, I believe, and introducing him will be Barb Valentine.
Okay, round two. If there's one thing that I've learned today is that I'm delighted that my playing career at Warner Pacific didn't result in being like an all-time leading scorer and so on, because I have a full head of hair. Matt and Billy. If we could dream about the perfect candidate to be a Warner Pacific College Athletic Hall of Honor inductee, we could imagine an athlete who dominated his sport, in fact, 2 sports, while he was here at college, and maybe one who continued to play his sport after leaving college, and to play his sport at the very highest level. Now, of course, we know that no Warner Pacific athlete would ever play in the major leagues in his sport. That's quite a dream, but we could dream about it. In addition, we could imagine a person who has impeccable character, one who made decisions in his life that honored others ahead of himself, one who even followed God's calling to make the important decisions in his life. And if we could really stretch those dreams, we might imagine a person who was loyal to our founding church, the Church of God of Anderson, Indiana, and maybe even someone who devoted his life to work for the Church of God. Obviously, all of that is more than we could ever expect in a single candidate for the Warner Pacific College Athletic Hall of Honor. Oh, but wait a minute. Come to think of it, that's exactly what this next inductee has accomplished. The man who I have the honor to introduce has accomplished all of those things. Darcy Fast was born on March 10, 1947 in Dallas, Oregon. He grew up in Olympia, Washington, attended North Thurston High School. At a very early age, he demonstrated incredible athletic ability. He excelled in high school in both baseball and basketball. His real passion was baseball. I didn't see him pitch, but I've heard stories about his pitching, and he had quite a fastball. I was told tonight that because of his fastball, the team also led the league in pass balls. More catcher. As a senior at North Thurston High School in 1965, that passion was inflamed when Darcy Fast was drafted by the New York Yankees. Now, if you remember the Yankees of the 60s, that wasn't a bad group to be part of. And on top of that, the Yankees were Darcy's boyhood dream team. However, feeling the tug to get a college education, and I might add to follow his girlfriend and future wife, Darcy made the surprise decision to go to college instead of accepting that opportunity with the Yankees. He ended up at Warner Pacific College, and after a couple of years of dominating as a knight on the baseball field and on the basketball court, Darcy was drafted again, this time by the Chicago Cubs. He signed with them, and in his first professional game with the Cubs, as a minor league player in Tacoma, Darcy made a rather auspicious debut by breaking Juan Marischal's team record for strikeouts in a game with 15 KOs in 8 innings of pitching. That's how he started. After a fast trip through the minor leagues, he was called up to pitch for the major league team, yes, the Chicago Cubs, in 1968. Made several pitching appearances with the Cubs that year, showing great promise. Unfortunately, God had other plans. The Vietnam War came between him and his dream. And the next year, he was sent to basic training. This basically kept him out of baseball and truly shortened his professional career as a pitcher. Following that, Darcy was drafted for a third time, this time by God's team. Although several times in his youth, Darcy had commented, "I'm never going to be a minister." God had other plans for him. He signed on to pastor the Centralia Community Church of God, a congregation of about 70 members. He felt that maybe he could give the church 3 years or so and see how this ministry thing worked out for him. Well, 30 years later, he retired from that very same church. After leading the church through 3 building campaigns and growing the congregation to 700 members, Darcy was a man with a vision and a desire to grow God's kingdom. Through those 30 years, with God's help, Darcy impacted the lives of hundreds of people. He committed to a family ministry that attracted a loyal congregation of family-oriented people. To give you a better idea of who Darcy is, I talked to some people that know him well. I spoke with Elmer Goodell, who served at Centralia as an associate ministry on Darcy's staff for many, many years. Elmer shared these words with me. Working alongside Darcy for some 20 years will always be one of my greatest joys in ministry. When I was a young kid at 25, Darcy saw something in me that I didn't even know I had. I am grateful that he gave me a chance to succeed, and much of my ministry philosophy comes from our time together. Maybe the best word I could use to describe Darcy is visionary. Where most people saw an empty lot, Darcy saw a full church. When others saw defeat, Darcy saw opportunity. God used him in an enormous way in my life and in the lives of countless others. I will always consider one of my greatest privileges to have served under Darcy Fast. I also reached out to Lyle Overbay, who grew up in Centralia under Darcy's tutelage. There's probably a few out here who've heard that name, Lyle Overbay. He had a 12-year career as a Major League Baseball player, a first baseman. In fact, I'm not sure if he's still playing or not. He played for the Diamondbacks, the Brewers, the Pirates, the Blue Jays, the Braves, the Red Sox, and even those Yankees. About Darcy Fast, Lyle Overbay had this to say. Darcy has had an impact on my life in so many ways, starting with the first time I met him. I realized the type of person that I wanted to be after seeing him lead his church and his family. He's a true leader in all aspects of life, and that's hard to come by nowadays. However, the biggest impact that he had on me personally is the commitment that he had to lead his 2 sons down the path of being godly men. To see what his sons have done for me and for my family shows how he gave his best effort at being a father at all times. Today, because of Darcy, I realized that being a godly father to my kids will be the most important job that I ever have. That's a professional baseball player talking. To honor and embrace fatherhood like he has, I can only hope to be half the man that he is. Obviously, Darcy Fast has made a difference in this man's life, but also in the life of many, many others. The Warner Pacific College Hall is called the Hall of Honor, not the Hall of Fame. As a professional athlete, Darcy Fast is likely the most famous athlete that has played here. But being an outstanding athlete is not enough to make this select group. Being committed to and directed by God to live a life for him is also necessary. Darcy Fast makes that grade in grand style. It is my pleasure to give to you, committed father and husband, Warner Pacific College Knight Athlete Extraordinaire, New York Yankees draftee, Major League Baseball pitcher, longtime Church of God pastor, and a man of God, the Honorable Darcy Fast.
Before I read the award, I remember as a young '98, Darcy throwing fastballs to, I think, maybe Leroy Tucker.
Yes.
And Danny Kaiser. And it was quite a racket. Yeah. And also, I think I probably have the distinct pleasure of being the only guy here to carry Darcy on my back doing sprints up and down the basketball court. Had I known he was going to be famous and honored, I probably would have thought better of him at the time. He was good. Let me read his award. Darcy Fast, Warner Pacific College Athletics Hall of Honor, baseball and basketball, inducted 2014. Though drafted by the New York Yankees in the 7th round, Fast enrolled at Warner Pacific College in 1965. He participated in basketball and baseball for the Knights during the 1965-66 and 1966-67 seasons, and was named All-Conference in both sports. Drafted again in 1967, this time by the Chicago Cubs in the 6th round, Fast signed a professional contract and started pitching in the minor leagues. Quickly promoted to AAA Tacoma, he broke Hall of Famer Juan Marichal's Pacific Coast League strikeout record in his first appearance. Darcy's reputation as one of the top pitching prospects in the Cubs organization, and his fast rise to the major leagues continued when he was called up by the Chicago Cubs in 1968 with less than 1 year of professional experience. Fast appeared in 8 major league games for the Cubs and struck out 10 batters in 10 innings pitched. He also walked 8 and gave up 6 earned runs and 8 hits. His professional career lasted 4 seasons from 1967 to 1970. After leaving professional baseball, Darcy entered Christian ministry and served as senior pastor of Centralia Community Church for over 30 years. His life has been profiled in the Chicago Sun-Times and Sports Spectrum magazine, as well as baseball books and magazines and countless newspapers throughout the country. His book, The Missing Cub, a memoir of his baseball career and life's calling, was published by Zulon, the X threw me, Zulon Press in 2008. He is a lifetime member of the Major League Baseball Players Alumni Association and the Association of Professional Ball Players of America. It's my pleasure to welcome Darcy Fast into Warner Pacific's Hall of Honor.
Steve, thank you for those kind words, and also, Bart, I want to tell you, I appreciate the words you've shared. More than that, I appreciate your tremendous contribution to Warner Pacific College. Warner Pacific College, years and years ago, was not quite the college that it is today. I met, I didn't meet her, but I asked her if she would marry me here at Warner Pacific College, Joanne. Her last name was Spute, and I remember Dr. A.F. Gray not being able to pronounce that when we were taking a Church of God doctrine class, and he'd always go something like Spute. Is Joanne Spute here today? And she was, and I asked her if she would marry me in 1968, and this June will be celebrating 47 years, I hope I have that right, honey, of marriage. She's been a cheerleader at middle school, high school, and college, and she's been the greatest supporter of my life. I want her to stand, and I want you to acknowledge. Now, I'd like to introduce you also to my trophies, my most important trophies, and I use that word in all love and respect, and that's my 2 sons and their 2 wonderful wives and their 4 grandchildren. All were here except for McKaylee, and she is at Arizona State University where she's attending school. My grandson is here. He's a left-handed pitcher, and I'm hoping that Warner Pacific College will think about getting baseball started again. You've got a young prospect right there. He's left-handed. He's got a great arm. But I just wish you guys would stand and quickly. Would you just let them know? Thank you so much. I'm not going to share a lot of time, but I do want to tell you my history a little bit with Warner Pacific College. This story that we're sitting in today would not be here during the time that I was here. As a young boy, I used to come with my parents, who, by the way, loved this college so much. It was Pacific Bible College back then, and I remember Mom and Dad would drive up this hill, and I couldn't wait to jump out of the car to turn somersaults from, it used to be, I think, Smith Hall, now it's the administration building, and turn somersaults all the way down here. There was no building here except a little house that I think was the music department or the religion department, and couldn't wait till I could get to Warner Pacific College and turn somersaults with the other kids that were here. That's how long and how far back I go to being a part of Warner Pacific College. And yet, as I grew up, I had one thing in mind that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And I remember as I got into high school and some opportunities were coming my way, my dad knew that my talents were being pulled away from the very place that he was hoping that I would attend. And I remember asking him on several occasions, Dad, what do you think? I said, I can't really imagine going to Warner Pacific. I'm not sure how long they're going to even have a baseball team or if they even have one. And at that time, I signed a letter of intention to play baseball at Washington State University, and they also were going to allow me to play basketball too. About 3 weeks before school started, I decided I'd come to Warner Pacific College. And I remember Dad just telling me simply this. He said, Darcy, I just want you to follow your heart and do what you think God wants you to do. And I said, Dad, if I go to Warner Pacific, I probably will never have an opportunity again to play baseball. And I was surprised when I came there and made that decision to come to Warner. The quality of ball players that were on the teams here at this college. Dan Kaiser was my catcher. Danny Williams played third base. And I'm thankful they're here today to be able to share this, because this is not about me today. It's really about all the guys that played baseball back in the 60s and played basketball here at this college before there was even a program marked to resurrect. And I've always learned in life that someone has paid a price before you ever get there. And I wish I could tell you about my relationship with E. Joe Gilliam, my mentor. I wish he could be here today. How he could tell stories, and the vision that he had for this college was unbelievable. And how the time really we wouldn't be sitting here today and enjoying being inside this building if it were not for him. We simply would not be. When we started playing baseball and started playing basketball here, I think these guys will all remember that I think there was one year we even had to buy our own baseball hats. We had to at least buy our warm-up gear. And no one wanted to play Warner Pacific College because we were just entering into the NAIA. Really, no small schools wanted to play us. Because number one, if we won, it would be an embarrassment to them. And number two, if we lost, it really didn't count for anything. And there was a man, as I was told, by the name of Ralph Coleman, who was the legendary longtime baseball coach at Oregon State University before Pat Casey came into that era. And he went to bat for Warner Pacific College. I'm not sure if some of you are aware of this story. But he began to contact colleges that we might be able to play. He was turned down many times. And the coach at Western Oregon University finally agreed to play, but we did not know the conditions that we were going to be playing this team in. And when we arrived at their ballpark, we found out the only way that Western Oregon University was going to play Warner Pacific was if they gave us 6 outs per inning. Well, I'll tell you one thing. The boys on Mount Tabor had a little more than that in them, and a little fight in them too. And I remember well telling the coach and some of the other guys out on the team that we were not going to play today unless we played this as a regulation game, 3 outs per inning. Well, they finally agreed to allow us to do that. We played the game. I got to pitch one of those games. We won that game. We won the second game. We beat up on them. And then we found out, I think that deserves it. And after we beat up on them, we played a college by the name of Lewis and Clark College here in Portland. And they had won the national championship the year before. And lo and behold, Warner Pacific beat Lewis and Clark College. And if you think it's just because of this person standing here today, it wasn't. It takes 9 people to be a part of a team. And the contributions these guys made, as well as what I contributed to, I believe led to the foundation of what Warner Pacific College was going to have in future years. I will always be grateful for that. The second year I was here at Warner Pacific, I was drafted by the Chicago Cubs. I realized then that they allowed me to do something that the Yankees wouldn't do, and that was to remain in college, not worry about the draft, even though I later had to worry about it. They allowed me to stay in college and pitch for them when I could. And so I signed with them, and part of the bonus that they agreed to pay was that they would pay for my remaining 2 years of college, which I was so grateful for. And signed with them, started playing ball in Tomball, Idaho. And it wasn't long after that that I found myself in Tacoma. And you heard about the results of that game. And it was the game that put me on the map into the fast rise of being with the Chicago Cubs. The following year, after 15 days after Joanne and I were married, I was playing a little bit in Lodi, California. I got a knock at the door one day. And it was my manager, Jim Marshall. He said, "Darcy, I've got some great news for you." He said, "You're being called up." And I thought, well, maybe I'll be called up to AA or AAA. No, he said, "You're being called up to the major leagues." He said, "You're going to be leaving today from San Francisco and joining the team in Atlanta, Georgia." And I remember getting in a day early in Atlanta. And while I was there, I stayed at the Marriott Motor Inn. And I'll never forget it because I went to the register and they gave me the key. We actually had keys during those days, not the little cards. Gave me a key, and I finally found my room on the 15th or 16th floor, wherever it was. And when I walked into the room, it looked like an ordinary room, just as it was in any hotel. But when I opened the door, I discovered that there were 13 other rooms within this room. And when I made a call to the front desk again to find out where in the world they got me, they said, "Well, the only room we had today, Mr. Fast, was the presidential suite." And that was my introduction to the major leagues. And yes, it was great. And even though it was short, I remember vividly the experiences that I had that day putting on my first uniform with the Chicago Cubs. And standing next to people like Ernie Banks and Ferguson Jenkins and Ron Santo and Billy Williams. And realizing that less than a year ago I was pitching for Warner Pacific College. I remember walking out on the mound the first time and being introduced in Atlanta, Fulton Stadium, now pitching for Chicago, number 38, Darcy Fast. And I remember hearing the crowd booing, and feeling as I was walking out there on that mound, that earthwork that contained that rubber on that mound, I felt like it was shaking. And I remember Randy Huntley coming out to me and saying, "Don't worry a bit about what's going on here." He said, I remember him telling me, he said, "Just remember to pitch like you did a year ago, wherever you were at." And little did you know, I was pitching for a school that didn't have a baseball team. I mean, barely had a baseball team, didn't have their own playing field. We borrowed a public school here to turn out in. And that didn't give me too much confidence. And I threw my warm-up pitches, and then I realized who was on deck, and it was none other than great Hank Aaron. And at that time, Hank did not have over 7 home runs, but he had over 500 home runs. And Randy came out again and he said, "Just don't worry about that guy, you just pitch." And it was in the 8th inning, they called me in, and I pitched to him. I remember the first couple of pitches were not even close to being strikes. And he was in a perfect position to be ahead of the order, and I was definitely behind in the order. And I wondered what he would do. And I remember turning around to the outfield, and at that time in Fulton Stadium, they had a teepee, and they had a brave that would come out. Maybe some of you remember when they would announce that an opposing player, that brave would come out with his tomahawk, and he would kind of intimidate you, is what he would do. I remember that well. But I also remember something more importantly than that. I remember my dad, when I was a little boy, telling me, "Darcy, keep this verse of scripture." And I was playing Little League at that time, and I couldn't attend a revival service by Wendell Wallace that we had in Olympia, Washington. And I remember him saying to me, he said, "Remember this verse, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." And that verse I recall. And I would walk back on that, turn around on that mound, and realize this was not about me. This is about something far bigger than that. And so I began to pitch to Hank, continued. The story, long story short, is that he popped one up. It was my first out. Mom sat on the third base made the first out in my major league career, and boy, was I relieved. I remember going back to Chicago, and Ernie Banks, some of you read about him recently, just passed away. A great ball player, Hall of Fame player. Ernie Banks, when I first got there, he came up to me and he said, Darcy, he said, do you and Joanne have any car transportation while you're here? And I said, no, I really don't. We're staying in an apartment close to the airport. And he said, well, he said, take my car. He said, it's an LTD, a Ford LTD, a beautiful car. He said, it's out in the player's parking lot. He said, if you take it, he said, just go and take it and use it as long as you want to. I was thrilled that he would come out. He was the kind of guy that just kind of came around me and made sure that the rookies were taken care of on the ball team. And Ernie said, don't mind what happens. He said, just go out there and have a good time. So after the game, I walked out to the car with my wife. There must have been about 200 people surrounding the area. And they were all interested in seeing one person. It wasn't Darcy Fast, it was Ernie Banks. And I barely made it to the car and heard all of this booming and noise that you can't believe. Finally got in it, and I remember people yelling at me, you're not Ernie Banks, you're not Ernie Banks. They were waiting there for his autograph. And little did I know that Ernie loved to do that with young ball players so that he could get your cab somewhere else out of the stadium where he was made. And that's exactly what he did. I can tell you many stories, and I won't do that today. But I want to tell you something that happened in my life. I knew from my roots being here at Warm City College, being around men like E.J. Gilliam, being around a guy like Dr. Oliver Tittrud, who taught kinesiology and physiology, and seeing that man stand up on a table, much like you're sitting at today, as he was lecturing, and get so emotional because of how that we were so fearfully and wonderfully made by God, that it would touch our hearts, that people who weren't even part of his class, students here at the college, would come to the class just to hear this man speak. And that passion and the emotion that he carried for what he was doing was the foundation, I think, for what went on here today. And what we see going on in the life of Warner Pacific. I remember Dr. Willow Perry. The gymnasium was named after her. You know, when you live as long as I have, been around as long as I have, I've known every one of the presidents except for Ottawa Flynn. So I know these people. And I remember Dr. Willow Perry teaching psychology. And the impact she had upon people's lives as they would listen to her. And the vision she had for the school and the vision she had for our lives. And I thought to myself, I was so glad that Mom and Dad steered me to Warm City College because I might not have found the fanciest buildings, or we might not have had the greatest sports teams in the world, but I did find something here that I would never find anywhere else. And that was people who loved me and took a tremendous interest in my life. They've been lifetime friends. And I want you to know, you guys, that it's a thrill for me to be here today. And this plaque I appreciate so much, I really do. The kind words are to me, almost an exaggeration of who I really am. But I do want you to know this plaque I take today, not for myself, but for all the guys that I played for during that era, that helped to make Warner Pacific what it is today. That to me is the greatest thrill. And I will tell you this, when Jesus Christ called me into the ministry, he did me the biggest favor that I've ever experienced. I often look back at my life and think he gave me a little taste of what it was like to play in the major leagues at a very young age and a very quick time in my life. But there was something that was really missing. To have all of that and to be able to sit in your room or your apartment or wherever in the motel and realize there's got to be more to this. And then to think that God would call me into the Christian ministry and allow me to be one of his is one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life. I want to thank you, Warner Pacific. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I want to thank Dr. Cook for her tremendous leadership of this college, and for all the others that she has followed. Jay Barber, Marshall Christensen, we just named Milo Chapman. Thank God for Warner Pacific College. And so, would you do me a favor as I leave here? Don't applaud me. Would you just applaud Warner Pacific College and everything you heard here today? Thank you.